Hello, Dave.
Good morning. I'm over here breaking the equipment. I think I took apart the microphone and put it back together in record time here.
Hard to say.
That's true.
Hey, we got some topics here.
Right.
Deer gun harvest. You got a bunch of different winter activities listed.
Oh, man. You got all kinds of good stuff
Yeah.
here. You're right.
So let's get to work
Should we
here.
dive right into it?
Yeah.
Okay. The Illinois gun season or shotgun season for the most part is over. There's still a couple counties in the area that have late winter seasons, but for the most part, the 7-day season is over. And as of today, there were 71,675 deer harvested during that 7-day period.
Wow.
Well, that compares, though, to last year where there were 77,160 harvested. So it was down about 6,000 deer, and a lot of that's weather related. There were some storms up here and rain. There was a lot of wind, and that doesn't help for deer harvest. The other thing is, the archery total, at least early on, was down by about 61. As of October 31st, was down by about 6,100 deer also. And I haven't gotten the final figures on that, but normally a big percentage of the archery season is harvested from a week before Halloween to about that first shotgun season, middle of November. And that's when most of that harvest occurs. The other thing that's going on is more people are back to work this year. The last couple of years we had some fairly heavy deer harvests, and a lot of people were off work or working from home.
Mm-hmm.
So they had time to get out and actually get in the woods. This year, more people were heading back to work, and maybe they could only hunt a day or two out of the 7 days versus all 7 days. So, and that's the two things I'm looking at is the weather. I know in central Illinois it was rainy, and rain doesn't work out real good either.
A lot of rain.
I brought my grandsons up they're from just south of Bloomington, Illinois, in Downs, Illinois, small town right off Route 74. And they both shot deer up here this year too. So they did their part. IDNR says that, and I believe them, there's somewhere between 660,000 to maybe 680,000 deer in the state.
My goodness.
Well, and you got to remember, Illinois is a really long state.
Yeah.
We go from the Wisconsin border all the way down to Kentucky, basically,
Mm-hmm.
and it gets pretty wide in the middle. So, and the western part of the state, along with the northwest and the southern, probably 1/4 of the state, are pretty wooded, and that's where most of the deer are harvested from. The extreme southern counties take a lot. Adams County, Fulton County, Joe Davis harvests almost 2,000 deer also. And that's all that wooded territory along those river corridors. But that's where a lot of it comes from. The problem, I've mentioned before up here is we have chronic wasting disease. And I know I hunt Carroll County, and that's one that the northern part of the county where they have found the disease in some of the animals. And I took all our animals in to be sampled. They take the glands out, they send it up to the University of Wisconsin, they do a slide, and they look for the disease. And fingers crossed, I haven't had one yet, but eventually it'll probably end up happening. And the protocol for that is IDNR calls you, says, hey, your meat you harvested or your animal you harvested is positive, and then they give you the option of having them come and destroying the meat. You can keep it if you want. I wouldn't recommend it. So far, there's been no human transmissions yet. I don't know. The other thing they were checking for this year, too, that I found kind of interesting at the check station was COVID in the deer. They're finding that white-tailed deer do carry it. And there was a representative from the USDA there, their animal control division, that was taking samples from deer to check for COVID, too. So, the stuff's all over. And it seems kind of strange that deer would be susceptible to it. It's the same as humans. But apparently it does happen. And they're finding that in Europe, too, with some of the red deer. They're carrying COVID, too. So can you get it from deer? I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I'm not sure about that. but it's odd that they do carry it. How it's spread, if it's a nasal, when deer get together, a lot of times they emit particles just like we do, and if it's spread that way or if it's in direct contact with that, I don't know. And how they got it originally makes me wonder too. It's just like,
well, I'm sure we'll find out more in the next weeks and months.
Hopefully, maybe next month I'll do a little research on that and see what I can find out for the the listeners. But they do carry it. I don't know if Iowa was sampling or not, because they finished their first firearm season on this side of the river. I know they got the second one coming up here pretty quick. So difference is Iowa hunts deer with gun during the non-breeding period. Illinois is just the opposite. Our gun season coincides with the middle to the end of the big rutting period and the start of the secondary rut too. So, and I kind of applaud the way Iowa manages their deer herd. I think that's the right way to do it. It takes a little bit of the pressure off some of those larger males that are your breeders, and you get a little bit more of a female harvest that way too with the does. So, but there is a difference in management styles. We can just separated by the river. So, other than that, I did my part. I harvested a doe fawn and a doe, and the gentleman where we hunt, my grandsons and I, was pleased with that. We took 1 buck and 3 females out of the herd. The deer density up where I hunt is somewhere around 35 to 40 animals per square mile, and normally 10 animals per square mile in good habitat is a reasonable number to shoot for. So you can see that the population up there does need control. So they're all over.
Okay, hey, let's go to winter activities. You got several topics to cover on that.
Yeah, I'm finishing up my trap line, and I'm going to start on my forestry work pretty soon. And I would suggest to landowners, if you're going to do some pruning, thinning in your woods, this is the time to start. It's nice and cold now, or was nice and cold. It's supposed to be 70 tomorrow, but for the most part, the tree diseases and the insects that impact those trees are dormant right now. And this is the time to be doing the cutting. I always suggest, you try to thin things out a little bit, get rid of some of the trees that don't belong, give those oaks and hickories and walnuts a lot of room for air circulation and sunlight. But this is the time in the winter to do it. Feeders, keep them clean, keep them stocked, because the weather's going to turn here in a day or two, and it's going to get a lot colder and windy, and this is when the birds need them. Nest boxes, it'd be a good time to sometime, maybe not right now, but a little bit later in the winter, get out there and clean them out. Leave them open so the mice don't get in them, especially bluebird boxes. I don't know how many bluebird boxes I've opened up and had a mouse jump out at me. And it happens almost every year. They love those bluebird boxes. They've got a base, and then they just bring in other materials, and they make a nice, cozy little house inside that bluebird box. I like to open them up and leave them open. Some people rinse them out with bleach. Be a little careful on that. Bleach can have a staying power, and it can emit odors that might impact the animals or birds. Wood duck houses, good time to clean them out, leave them open. You can get kestrels and owls in them during the winter, but it's a good time to restock them a little bit later. But it's a great time once the ice freezes to get out there and put new houses up too, those wood duck houses. It's really easy to do it. You pound the pole right through the ice, you set it in, and you're right there in the water, and you can do it. You don't have to worry about a boat or falling in or anything else. Just let the ice get about 4 inches before you do that, though. Food plots, if you haven't already, go out there and run down about a quarter of your food plot so it's easier for the smaller mammals and birds to get to the food. A lot of people look at me like I'm crazy when I tell them that, but deer and turkey have the advantage of being fairly large, and they can even reach ears of corn. But if you have quail or songbirds or small mammals, they can't get up there to get that grain. So the easier you can make it for those smaller animals and birds to get to it, the better off you are. I typically either take a tractor or a four-wheeler and just drive through, part of the plot and knock it down for those animals, those small animals. The deer and turkeys will fend for themselves pretty well, but the small animals might need a little help. So if you got some trees growing up in your native CRP fields or even the cool season fields, this is a great time to go out and cut them and treat them. You'll be able to get rid of them fairly easily, and you don't have to worry about them taking over your plots and losing your cover. And if you're planting native fields, we do a lot of our CRP plantings in Whiteside County during the winter. I will warn you this year, I checked with a couple fertilizer dealers because we'll use potash as a carrier for the native grass when we spread it. Potash is extremely expensive this year, if you can get it even. The guy I talked to said the best we can do is we'll put you on a list, and if a farmer doesn't use all of his, we'll call you. And he said your odds of getting it this year are probably 0. So, be aware of that if you're doing that. You might have to go to a different carrier if you're spreading it. One of the other related things you can do too, especially with the forestry work, is build some brush piles. Great time of the year to do that. Put the big stuff on the bottom and layer the smaller stuff up on top. It's a wonderful, wonderful practice that you can do. It's a good thing to do on a nice, cool winter afternoon, and it'll benefit a lot of wildlife. Maybe in a 10-acre plot, put 2 or 3 brush piles around. A lot of small animals will use them. Birds will use them. I've seen a lot of songbirds go into them that roost in them during the night and stay in them during the day to keep warm. So great thing to do. My other thing, and I think I've been fairly open about this, I'm retiring in April. And one of the things I'd like to see, and I pushed this for years and years, is if you have 40 acres or more, try to dedicate maybe an acre of that, the worst part of it, to some kind of habitat, whether it be trees, shrubs, grass, maybe put a food plot on part of it. But that's all you need. Even 80 acres, if you could put 1 acre habitat for every 80 acres you have, you'd be amazed at the number of game and non-game species that would benefit, and we'd see those populations going back up. There's so many farms that I go by in both Iowa and Illinois where, all the fence rows are gone. All the weedy, brushy corners are gone. The ditch banks look like they've been mowed with a sickle mower every 2 weeks. And all it takes is just a little, habitat work. It doesn't have to be anything very complicated, just something that those animals can use during the different seasons to get away. So 1 acre per 40 or 1 acre per 80, you'll make a big difference. Okay, one final thing. I would encourage anybody either in northeast Iowa or northwestern Illinois, if you shoot a deer, take it in to be tested for chronic wasting disease. I know I talked about that a little bit at the beginning, but both IDNRs are sampling. And even if the check stations aren't open, you can leave the head with your information and they will get back to you on it if they're negative. But we need to get a handle on this disease. And Illinois has been fairly aggressive with giving out extra permits for harvest plus sharpshooting during the winter. I know Iowa's been fairly good about those permits too, but it seems like it's creeping down the river and creek corridors. If you look at the maps where the positive samples are, it's going right down those streams, both the Rock River and the Mississippi. The theory was it got into Iowa possibly from Joe Davis County. The deer actually swam across the river or walked across during the winter, and some of them were infected and got into those Iowa counties. So it's there, and we need to get a handle on it. It's going to get worse, unfortunately, if we don't control it, and it's gradually spreading. I can't remember the number of counties, but there's at least a dozen in Illinois that are impacted by it, all the way from LaSalle to the Mississippi River. So if you're familiar with LaSalle, Illinois, LaSalle County, that's basically in the middle of Illinois. So that big of a strip of counties has been impacted by it already. So, and IDNR is doing a good job, don't get me wrong. I appreciate what those folks do. I know a friend of mine spent 16 years sharpshooting every winter, sitting in a tent freezing, trying to decrease these deer populations to stop the spread of this stuff. But they're trying. And I know Iowa's been making an effort at it too now. So, but it's something to keep in mind. If you shoot a deer up here, take it in to get tested. let the biologists take a peek at it and see what's going on.
And
So,
maybe in the spring here, you can let us know what.
yeah,
gone on through the week.
I will. Yeah, usually they go all the way through March, so hopefully maybe my last show I'll be able to give you some facts and figures on that.
All right.
So,
Well,
thank you.
I want to wish you Merry Christmas.
Yeah,
Happy
Merry
New
Christmas
Year,
to
and
you,
we'll
both
see
of you, gentlemen.
See you in 22.
That's right.
All right. Gary?
You're listening to AM 1340